Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Lipa, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal.
Thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, there are now no fans in the stands. What we are learning, though, is that perhaps the problem all along was the players. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right, we got rid of the fans. And brought back football. But I think, in retrospect, maybe we should have gotten rid of the players. And certainly there will be some of them that need to go, and I'm sure that will be a topic for conversation today after Arsenal, get this, lose a football match. Tell me where you heard that before. At the death to a guy who maybe shouldn't have been on the pitch. It all felt very Arsenal, and I said this on the Patreon pod, but it would have felt like playing Stoke. It was just missing the fans booing an injured player. But maybe they were doing it from home. Who knows? We will never know. Not a great day for Arsenal. A lot to pick out of that. I do want to let you know that we are doing, for patrons, we're doing quick preview pods and instant reaction pods. And in terms of the instant reaction, basically the format is we each give a headline. We each give a player whose stock is rising after the match and a player whose stock is falling. Easier to do the latter in this case. So in that way, we'll definitely keep it separate from this pod, and still plenty of analytics, headlines, analysis, all that stuff to go into the regular pod. So I think if you want to join for that, great. But also if you just prefer to stay with this pod, there'll be plenty of meat on the bone and lots of stuff we will not have discussed in that short post-match reaction. So a little something for everybody. And that's our way to try to keep the schedule going as the football comes thick and fast. And once again, my PSA that I find the expression comes thick and fast to be a little unpleasant. So Paul's on Twitter at Pause in My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo.
Clive's on Twitter at Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
Tim's on Twitter at Stillberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
I want to do something unusual, Paul. I want to start with you. That's not the unusual part. But I want to skip the lineup for a second, skip the tactics, analytics, performance, all of it, and just focus on something that needs to be, I think, highlighted in this pod. And because of the way we do our podcast, really trying to get granular on the football, I think we could miss out on something that has to be part of this. So, and this isn't building to a joke, amazingly. The refereeing is an issue. And what Basuma did, was he just under the knee on Lacazette? Is that who he went studs down on? And then what obviously Moy did to Leno was...
He did Pepe on the shin. He did Lacazette multiple times from behind.
Yep. We've seen Pepe get nearly killed multiple times this season without repercussion. I do think that this is a dangerous way for football to be played and refereed, and it does seem to be happening to us. I hate to go full refereeing conspiracy, but there's something going on here. And, the tricky players always get a rough ride when they first come to England. That has been the case for Pepe. But I think what happened to Leno is totally unacceptable. I listened to the Arscast a bit today, and I know James Gunnerblog was a little less exercised about it. I think Andrew a little more upset about it, calling back to the Debussy challenge that put him out basically for his Arsenal career, really. And to be fair, did pave the way for Bellerin, so there's something there. But, I mean, how aggravated are you about the refereeing? In the City match, we had the Nketiah foul that wasn't given, and then Luiz does the same thing, gets a penalty and a red card. I didn't think it was good. But in this case, we lose arguably our best player of the season for what could be as much as a year, for what I don't think is a proper challenge. How do you feel about it, feel about the refereeing, and the extent to which allowing that degree of physicality and rotational fouling is something that totally destroys the flow of the game and the ability of the game to be played properly?
It totally destroyed the flow of the game and the ability of the game to be played properly.
Perfect.
I don't normally
give
a crap. I don't normally give a crap about refereeing stuff apart from it's frustrating, because I think we get into conspiracy theories and blah, blah, blah. But the last two games, I think the refereeing has been abysmal and has basically enabled teams who use fouling repeatedly and cynically to destroy the momentum of the game. Obviously, this City scenario, whole other thing, because they would have beaten us hands down either way. But they certainly took any of our steam out of us in terms of getting momentum back. But this game, I mean, Basuma, it was just a joke. The number of times he just goes into the back of Lacazette or into the back of Aubameyang, and it was basically a license to do what you want. I'll let other people talk about the Leno situation thing. My feelings are a bit more mixed on that in terms of intent, etc. He still should have been done for something. And you can argue about his level of intent, etc. But across the game, the referee basically destroyed momentum time and time again by giving a soft free kick in promising build-up situations and letting the Basumas of this world just plow into the back of people again and again, and then get up and berate the referee and talk about how unfair things were. I thought in this particular game, without the crowd, ironically, it seems to help the referee identify the level of severity of a situation when the away crowd gets wound up and the home crowd gets wound up about the free kicks. At least you can measure a degree of intensity. But the referees are just letting this slide. I think it really impacted us and our momentum and our ability to play. And it was dangerous. And you would think as well, in this time in which they're giving you an extra couple of subs, they're giving you 5 subs because they're giving you water breaks, that they would be on this shit. I mean, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about how much contact would they allow between players. It's a fucking joke. And I actually think somebody like a Ferguson or even a Wenger, a Mourinho would have gone a little bit ballistic in the press conference, and Arteta's still in his keeping his nose clean phase, but he needs to let rip and make this an issue out there. It's one of the jobs of the manager to get protection for his team, to make this an issue, to make this a story, so that people start getting serious about this shit. I normally don't give a crap about refereeing. This wound me up fucking massively.
It did for me too, and I think the fact that Leno was so upset about it tells you all you need to know. Look, there are people that are like, oh, you want to take all the physicality out of football. Not at all. A 50-50 shoulder challenge where one guy goes flying to the ground, or, a good sliding challenge where you come in full speed but with your studs down and you're, on time and not going through the man aggressively, or, jumping in the air for a 50-50 ball and one guy gets, pushed out of the challenge. Like, that can happen. But this is on a defenseless player. He's got the ball in his hands, and he's got 2 steps where he looks at him. There's a great screenshot. You can see he's still about 2 steps away. The ball is in Leno's hands, and he makes the decision he's going to go through him. And he does it, and I think Andrew called this out on the Arscast accurately, as usual, to see if he can get him to lose the ball outside the area and, handle outside the area. But it is a cheap shot. The NFL is not a soft league. The NFL has a rule called hit on a defenseless receiver. You cannot hit a guy who's defenseless. It's just bad sportsmanship, if nothing else. You're trying to gain an edge for your team at the expense of the safety of a player when you know you do not have a sporting chance at getting to the ball or influencing the play in a legal way. And for referees to allow it, I think encourages it. And then the problem is...
The game allows it, Elliot. The game allows it.
Well, the game shouldn't allow it. It shouldn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't in rugby. It doesn't in the
issue.
NFL. It is extreme. When someone is in the air and they can't defend themselves, and you can take them off their balance, and you're not challenging for it. To be clear, he was not challenging for the ball. He's just trying to unbalance a player in the air. And once you're in the air and someone unbalances you, then any outcome is possible. Could he have just landed on his bottom and been fine? Sure. You notice I'm a dad now. You say I said bottom, so like his ass or something. But anyway, well, Tim, let me ask you this then. Leno's clearly hurt. It's clearly a cheap shot. And I think that one thing that happens if referees don't take matters into their hands, and players have to, and that's how the game gets dangerous very quickly. But Arsenal, as usual, just a nice group of lads. How frustrated are you to not see the response at the time of the injury, to not see them circle the ref, to not see them do the things to the ref or to the opposition that we see so often? And maybe you can add a bit on how much you liked or disliked the comments by Arteta and even Martinez in sort of letting him off the hook for the foul.
Yeah, so, just to endorse everything you've said there, Elliot, rugby as well, similar.
Yep.
If you push someone when they're off their feet, that they recognise how dangerous that kind of foul is.
And it's not a gentle sport.
No, exactly. And in English football, we've still got this really immature idea that like hitting someone who's defenceless is somehow brave, rather than the kinds of physical feats that you mentioned. With Arteta, I'm less I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because I think what this comes down to really is accountability. And on one hand, I don't want the manager to blame that. And I do kind of want there to be a bit of a difference in the public reaction and what he says to the players. So I kind of don't want him to really go big on that and blame that. I want the players to do that on the pitch. And yeah, I want them to do the things that you said, like surround the referee, highlight it, get in the player's face. And so the weird thing about this foul is I'm not even necessarily sure I accept that no one is ever sent off for that. I think that's a problem. But that they should be sent off for this type of foul and the kind of pushing defenders into onrushing goalkeepers and pushing people into advertising hoardings, which are rarely even given as fouls, let alone treated as violent conduct. I think it should be treated as violent conduct, but it's not. And then I guess the thing that wound me up about it as well was on BT Sport. And again, usually I'm not exposed to this when Arsenal are playing, but fucking idiots like Rio Ferdinand on BT Sport saying, oh, it's not his fault, because like, and that's just such a juvenile argument, and it drives me mad how juvenile. Like Rio Ferdinand is 41. He should have grown out of this by now. And I guess that's the problem when you have ex-footballers as pundits, because they don't grow up. They stay 12 years old their whole lives, like Rio Ferdinand has, and they focus on things like, oh, he didn't mean it. And it's like it almost never does a player mean to injure another player. Roy Keane must be the only one I can ever really remember
Dan Smith.
On Alf-Inge Haaland. Well, even then, like, you know,
yeah, I was just think there's no point in what I said. Ignore me.
Yeah. But I don't think what's going through that, like, people get frustrated and they're right, I'm going to hit him. Pretty much no one except Roy Keane on Alf-Inge Haaland goes into a challenge and thinks, I want to do his cruciate here. Like, frustration might get the better of them, and they might think in a split second, I want to hit him, and then they might regret it afterwards. Like, stop wasting our fucking time talking about whether people mean it or not. This is what children focus on. Like
it's not in the rules either. It doesn't say intent to injure in the rules.
No, exactly. No one cares. Stop talking about it. Like, I remember when my nephews, my two oldest nephews, who are both now in their late 20s, were like 6 and 7. When I was younger, and like they were playing a bit rough in the living room and like broke a vase in my mum's living room, and my mum came in and, you know, obviously, you know, annoyed that they'd broken this vase, and she was just like, you know, barely concealed anger. She was like, look, okay, but can you just clean it up? And they both, because they were 6 and 7 years old, they kept saying, but it wasn't me, Nan. And my mum was going, I don't care who it was, can you just clean it up? And they just kept, like, they got into this loop of just going, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me that did it. And my mum was like, I don't care. I just want you to clean it up, because that's what we teach children, that if you fuck up, you own it. You take ownership of it. And so whatever has happened to Leno, whatever the injury is, Mopé has to own that. Telling him he didn't mean it does not help anyone. It's actually incredibly damaging, because he'll just do it again. And look, I don't want him killed or hung, drawn and quartered or anything.
I'd be fine with it.
He has to own that he has injured Bernd Leno, and he knowingly took a decision that was very dangerous, and he has to own that, just like someone who drives too fast. They don't mean to hit someone, but if they do, they have to own the consequences. That's what happens with adults, and it drives me fucking mental that football and footballers and, you know, 12-year-olds in 41-year-old bodies like Rio Ferdinand get lost in the intent thing. But anyway, that rant aside, the Arsenal players, they have to take some accountability here as well. Yes, surround the referee, surround the player, and the next time he's on the ball, give him a bit of a shoulder charge.
Do him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure he knows that he can't get away with that. Look at that goal he scores in the last minute. It's actually quite a brave goal, because he's got like a defender coming for, well, it's Mustafi, but nominally a defender coming for him. He's got a goalkeeper diving at his feet, and he should have been terrified. He should have been fucking terrified, and he wasn't, because nobody except Leno himself, like, what a symbol for how pathetic our reaction was, that it was left to Leno on his own stretcher to confront the player. Like that is an image that should sting those players. And I don't want Arteta to say that in public, but today at Colney, I would really like to think he's saying, look, come on, I'm not saying go out and do players or anything, but that looks really bad. That looks really bad for your kind of togetherness and your solidarity. And even if Arteta doesn't want us going out kicking people, which, you know, I'm not saying like launch at his shins 2-footed, but a bit of a rap on the ankle, bit of a shoulder charge, let him know, get in his face. But yeah, I think it looked bad. And I think it looked even worse that really what they were upset about was that the player scored the winner at the end. And they kind of, you know, Guendouzi should have had his hands on Mopé's throat when the injury happened, not at the final whistle.
Well, and a few things. First of all, I mean, let's not pretend good teams can't be cynical teams. The biggest cynical rotational fouling team in England is Manchester City. Okay, so you can mete out some justice and be a bit cynical and still be a good football team in terms of the way you play. I think once Leno shows that he's furious with Mopé, Arteta has to back him. And I think the fact that I think Arteta's comments after the match would be, I wouldn't love them, but I'd be more okay with them if Leno had just shaken Mopé's hand and been done with it. But the fact that he was so incensed, I think Arteta has to defend him. And you know, look, Jose Mourinho sucks. He's the worst. And as he's gotten worse as a coach, he's created more internecine situations in his own club. But when he was at his pomp, it was siege mentality. Everything was us against them. And I think Arteta has missed an opportunity to go out and give it big. Just another example of a player being treated harshly by the opposition, by the referees. Against City, the referees didn't give us the calls. Against Brighton, we didn't get the calls. They're not defending my players. I'm losing players every single game. Pepe has been taken out roughly. Now I've lost my player of the season, my goalkeeper for a long period because the referees are incompetent and the players are violent and it's not going to work, and we are going to start dealing with it ourselves if the referees don't. And you create that siege mentality and you get the players in a huddle at practice and you say, they're coming for us and we're not going to take it anymore. We make a stand now together. And you try to make it us against them. And I think what he's done is he's let the air out of the balloon with that by being nice. And you just, you know, maybe it's because he's been a player recently and he can still connect with being a player and he kind of wants to be in that fraternity of players. But like, as a coach, you've got to take these opportunities to create siege mentalities. One other point I want to make about physicality. This is where I think the rules are stupid. You take 2 steps running to push a defenseless guy in the air down and it's, oh, that's part of football. You tap your forehead to another guy's forehead and he goes down and it's a red card and you're gone 3 games for violent conduct. We think this is still the English football where spitting is worse than breaking someone's leg, according to, who was it, Souness who said that or whatever. This is English football where tapping someone with your forehead is worse than, pushing a defenseless guy in the air. So I think that this over fixation on, oh, well, it happens in football. You know, Guendouzi's going to go for 3 games for putting his hand on a guy's throat. And the guy who lost us our keeper for a year doing something that is not sporting, just dirty. It's not sporting. What he did, you can say, oh, it happens all the time. There's no sporting benefit for him doing it. And nothing's going to happen to him. And in the chat, Paul just posted the image, the straight leg down the knee. It's Basuma on Mustafi at 54:39 on the clock, and it's right under his kneecap. It's straight down with his studs. It is filthy. And again, nothing done. Clive, I'd like to move on to the football now, unfortunately, because I think being outraged about this is better than anything that happened from a footballing standpoint for the most part. But I will certainly let you have a final say on it if you have interest.
Yeah, briefly, very briefly. I'm in the Andrew camp. We've spoken about this offline, actually. And I tell you now, the Debussy one was there are 2 sort of fouls that annoy me in football. The Leno foul when you put someone in the air, and also when you foul somebody as they're just coming off the pitch. They're almost like they're free ones. You can do that. When you're just off the pitch, you can get fouled and no one seems to get booked. Right? So the Debussy one had both of those scenarios in, and obviously the Leno one up in the air. Totally agree with the rugby analogy. The game allows this to happen, which allows the Rio Ferdinands to respond as they did. They don't understand the danger of being up in the air. and landing. Landing is the key thing, and you can't predict how someone will land. Hence why you put someone in the air, you change their whole balance, they topple over, hyperextension. I did my cruciate exactly the same way, coming down from a header. Someone tapped my foot as I was coming down, hyperextension on my cruciate. So this is just a simple little tap on my foot that just took my balance away, and that was it. So these things happen. The game needs to change its rules to recognise when another professional puts another professional in danger and risks his health for no real benefit. A tackle's a tackle, things, accidents happen, but that was just gamesmanship to get a free kick.
Yeah. So we'll leave it aside, but at the end of the day, it is just really frustrating. And I don't know what to say other than, if you let players get away with stuff, then eventually it's going to lead to vigilante justice, which is worse for everybody. But for Arsenal right now, I think the fact that we're not doing that is unfortunate. So anyway, let's move on, Clive. Let's talk a little bit about the lineup now. We'll get into the football. I think one of the things we're going to have to do in this conversation is acknowledge that there was a good period, because we're going to kill the team and kill the players and kill everybody involved, and maybe even Mopé if we're lucky. But there was a good period in this game for the first 20 or 30 minutes or so, where I thought the ball moved quickly. We got into interesting positions. We created some openings, if not clear chances. And I don't know why it stopped. Maybe we can get into that. But how do you feel about the lineup he picked and the way it did seem to click a bit in that opening period?
Yeah, I think this game bothered me from a result perspective. From a tactical perspective, it's my favourite game of the season, because this is the first step towards what I hope will be how we'll play going forward, which is moving to a three-man midfield, having variations of what we do on the ball, what we do off the ball, how we use Saka in his Kevin De Bruyne left-sided lookalike role. That whole wing fielder role, I think, is really, really smart and suits his game amazingly well. We heard about it in the Brentford friendly. To see it on a game, to see us start this game for the first half hour or so, we looked super sharp. We should have been 2 up in the first 6 minutes, right? So we looked really good. Pepe looked sharp down the right-hand side, and we were connecting the three. We had them really in trouble. So from a tactical point of view, seeing Guendouzi to 6, and by the way, you can see a system and then recognise that some people in that system are not the right people, but then look beyond that and then look at the system and imagine different players in those roles and imagine what we could do and move a few things around. We could be really effective in that role, and there are some real beneficiaries potentially. Tierney could be one. Obviously, Saka could be another. We find a role for him, which allows people like Martinelli to get closer to the team. We see Pepe in a role. We'll talk about the right-hand side in a little while, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But we see what Pepe could be with the right level of support behind him. And you just look at the game. You also look at it on two sides. You have the left. You have your left back. You have your left 8, and you have your left forward. On the left-hand side, we had Kalashnik, we had Saka, and we had Aubameyang. I felt that worked pretty well. That could be improved upon. Right, so on the right-hand side, we had obviously Bellerin, Ceballos, and into Pepe. That didn't work as well, and that needs to be improved upon. And I think we have to find out more about what works, what doesn't work, because really we are talking about next season. So on Saturday when I went mental at Bellerin, it wasn't because I don't like him. It wasn't because I don't think he can be our right back. It's because his role has now changed. He's now an inverted right back. There are other people who can do that better. We need the connection between Bellerin, Ceballos and Pepe. And when that worked, we looked quite good early until Pepe got fouled, went down. And I felt he took a while to get back into the game. But it's very important from a game perspective that we make sure that we give the ball to our match winners. And our match winners in this game were Aubameyang and Pepe. And personally, I don't think we recognised that enough, and I felt the game lacked some game intelligence. And I thought it was very good what we saw in that half hour. I'm going to hold on to that feeling, despite feeling devastated by the result, because there's real potential. And if Arsenal are going to be an adult team, this is the system we need to play. We just need to change some of the parts.
Yeah, I don't, Paul. I don't want to shut you out of the what we did well conversation, not just because it's in your wheelhouse, but because I know you felt strongly that we started the game well. So before we turn this into a Doomcast, do you want to follow up on Clive's points about what worked early? I mean, just to put it in perspective, by the way, in the first half hour, we had 5 shots. We were getting into dangerous positions. We had 5 shots. In the last half hour, as crazy as it sounds, because that wasn't a particularly good period for us, I mean, we had about 7 shots. The middle 30, I think we had 1 shot. And it is the case with this Arsenal team that when we have an advantage, we just don't step on throats. We don't really leverage that advantage. And so it's that middle 30 for me where we just let the game kind of drift sideways, 1 shot to their 3. That's where I think we have to look at this game and say, why is it that we just let games drift away? The end of halves, the beginning of halves, not great. But before we get into everything that went wrong, Paul, do you want to sort of finish off the positivity section of the pod with what you liked in the opening 30 minutes or so, or 20 minutes?
Yeah, I agree with Clive. Like, this was one of the most interesting lineups we put out there. Forced by a bunch of changes, we did really interesting things. This was Guendouzi sitting as the deepest player. And I think, he took a lot of flack for this, I think, unfairly. To some degree, I think Danny did too. They were kind of quiet to some degree, but that's because we played everything up the wings. But everything isn't everything. We played most things up the wings. Things we did through the center. If people go back and look at this game again, and I know they don't want to because it was so painful, there's really interesting, not even passages of play, but movements in this game. Up through Guendouzi, Ceballos. I don't think Hector was great or good, but I think he fulfilled his role in this. And the 3 of them connected often enough through the center that you could see interesting things happening. Most of the things happened up the wings. That's why Pepe was glued to the right touch line, and we'll talk about where we'd prefer him to be playing. But you can see in the system why that made sense based on Bellerin playing Kyle Walker in central midfield role. Also really interesting was the lineup at the back. I mean, it just felt like a 3-4-3 for much of the game, even though it looks like we started with a 4. But you have the 3 centre backs, but Kolasinac kind of cheating upfield a bit, Bellerin disappearing into midfield in possession, and we mostly had possession for the first 70-something minutes. So we were kind of playing with this 2-3 centre backs thing. Saka nominally playing in midfield, but pushing right out to the left wing to give us the width, like Pepe was on the other side. There was loads of movement. Pepe was maybe the one guy who was fairly fixed, but everybody else is very fluid between Bellerin moving in and out of midfield, Ceballos moving all over the place. You have Saka in midfield, but on the wing, Aubameyang moving around, Laka dropping into midfield. So you'd very often have Laka connecting with Danny, Hector, and Guendouzi. And it created interesting situations that I don't think we fully took advantage of. So, yeah, we had a good first 15, 17 minutes or so. And then our play was still interesting, but we didn't manage to put them to the sword for much of it. And then the start of the second half, I thought we were very good again, right through to our goal. I think there are really good, interesting periods of play, very dynamic, nothing standard about our setup. As Clive said, tactically one of our most interesting games, and we should have put them to the sword. We should have scored a couple of goals. Saka absolutely shone in this game again. Pepe had a couple of moments, and I really liked what Guendouzi did in this game, and I was frustrated that he took so much shit. People were saying, well, why doesn't he make himself more available, this, that, and the other? That wasn't the plan. You can see that there that they're pointing, they're gesturing to where the ball's supposed to go. You could see a couple of times we passed to Pepe when he wasn't even there because he's still learning where he's supposed to be when the centre backs are playing out. It was very defined system, and I mostly liked it.
Yeah,
I pretty much liked this game all the way on through till when we scored, and then inexplicably, just to hint at the future Doomcast, Danny Ceballos covers their corner, a two-man short corner, on his own, and everybody else is basically in the 6-yard box. And I don't understand it, because up to 73 or so minutes, whenever we scored our goal, I liked what we were doing and I could defend it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that ends the positivity portion. Tim, let's skew negative now to fit the zeitgeist. I think it's zeitgeist, right? Zeitgeist?
Yeah.
Zeitgeist. Okay. So it's kind of like my Schadenfreude thing. I never quite got it. So as far as the game turning against us, one thing that I want to talk about is, and I had a debate about this on Twitter. Pepe scores from a position that's relatively low XG, and people like to point out, you can't depend on that kind of goal. You need to create better chance of that. But like, Pepe has a great curled left-footed shot on him. We've seen that from set pieces. I think he's an excellent finisher, actually. And I think he's an excellent deliverer of a final ball inside the box. And I think his trickiness also puts defenders on skates in the box. And I do think if you get him in the box more, he's going to create higher XG chances, finish higher XG chances, but also occasionally get you goals like that. The point is, he's getting chalk on his boots too much. And this is a player who we spent a lot of money on. I think you look at the left with Saka drifting out to the left and Kolasinac kind of stepping up behind him, and that pushes Oba central. Like, I like that dynamic. But on the right, it's Bellerin drifting central, Pepe pushed out wide, and either Lacazette at the top of the box or sometimes even Ceballos running beyond Bellerin and being sort of like the point of the triangle. I don't know why we can't just sort of rotate that triangle and have it be Bellerin out wide and Pepe in the box and Ceballos in behind him, or however you want to describe it. But I feel like we need to, I say we, I got a mouse in my pocket? It's not me. I feel like Arteta needs to change that dynamic and push Pepe closer to the box and less out on the touchline where he's isolated. There were so many periods where he did get the ball and he's collapsed on by 2 or 3 players, and there's nowhere for him to go with it. And, to be fair, his instinct is to try to beat them all, and he carried it out over the end line a few times and things like that. But for you, is the structure we're using on the right and the way it keeps Pepe isolated out there one of the things that Arteta has to fix and a problem with this game specifically?
Yeah, 100%, and I think Clive touched on it quite well because you can see what's happening on the left, right, and who it suits, and it kind of suits Saka and that inside left space. That's not terrible for Aubameyang either, and we've seen Saka play really well at left back, and we've seen Tierney play really well at left back. Like, there's a theme going on here, right? The players that like the left-hand side are the ones we tend to get the performances out of. Martinelli was doing great on the left, started on the right against Burnley, did nothing, hasn't played since, basically. And what we're doing on the right, it doesn't suit Bellerin, it doesn't suit Pepe, it doesn't get the best out of either of them. Obviously, the issue we've got is that if you're going to play Aubameyang on the left, really you want him coming off the flank.
That's a great point. Yeah.
And obviously, in Arteta, or not just in Arteta's system, in most team systems, you have like one of your wingers is an inside forward and one's an outside forward, and really you don't want Aubameyang on the touchline either. I mean, and that is a difficult problem to solve, right? Because it's whack-a-mole. Because you
could just play Aubameyang central, I guess, as a striker.
Well, yeah, exactly. So one of the things that was working quite well before the break was the link between Pepe and Aubameyang was becoming better, and you even saw Aubameyang scoring headers from Pepe crosses, just from that space where Pepe scores that goal. We've seen him score goals from there before. We've also seen him set up goals there from there before. So there's the Aubameyang one at West Ham. There's an Aubameyang goal against Everton just before, I think maybe the last home game before lockdown. Getting Pepe and Aubameyang close together, I think, has some real highlights, some real benefits to it, and then of course, which is why before the game I said I kind of wanted to see Saka on the left because he can stay nice and wide. He can stay out there on the touchline and play like a winger with chalk on his boots, and take fullbacks on, and then just have Pepe and Aubameyang almost like a front two, effectively, and really get that link up going. And I think especially because, and I completely agree with Paul, I think there was a lot to like about the way we set up. I think there's been a lot to like about the way we've actually set up in both games so far. And we've started both games pretty well, which says to me that actually the way that our intentions have been good. I think one of the things we've lost is that ball progression. And when you look at the players that have come out of the team, so one of the things I've been reflecting on since Saturday is how much mitigation does the coach deserve? Like, what are his excuses, basically? And I think one of them is perhaps the fact that he's lost David Luiz, who's crucial to the way we build play. Okay, put Pablo Mari in, he does the same thing. Now we've lost him as well. We lost Granit Xhaka and not played Mesut Ozil. Now, Guendouzi can do some of the things that Xhaka can do, so I don't think that's a terrible loss. Mari and Luiz, that's a bit of a loss, but Ozil's the one, and like not being able to link that midfield and attack because no one else can do even an impression of that, and that hurts Pepe as well because it means the ball's not going out there to him. And so when Ozil's playing, he's one of the few players in the team who actually likes to go over to the right. And then, I've still got questions about how well it works, but at least Pepe's got someone to play off. So when he gets the ball out wide, Ozil's there. Or if Pepe wants to come inside a bit, Ozil will go on the outside of him. And that's a piece we really, really missed. But yeah, I mean, look, in conclusion, I think Pepe is not a winger. He's an inside forward. Bellerin, there's been a lot of talk about whether Bellerin's just lost some physical capacity. I have to say, I don't know about that yet. I don't know about that. The reason I don't know about it is because he's not playing it's not like he's trying to get up the flank and failing. He's not being asked to. He's being asked to stay back, to tuck in. So I'm not seeing him like blowing out of his arse, trying to run up and down the touchline. I'm not seeing him go anywhere. He's kind of staying put, and I don't think that really suits him. And ultimately,
is there any chance, Tim, that they're protecting Bellerin?
Yeah,
in saying that we need you to play a kind of an 80% role as a wing back. We don't want, if we get repeated sprints of 80 yards from you, Bellerin, you're going to be fucked.
Yeah. Can I just respond to that though, real quick? I think that's slightly generous only because I think the other issue is even if you want to do it from the other side, neither Kolasinac nor Tierney is a possession passer up the pitch. Neither of them has that skill. And Bellerin, whatever you think of his deficiencies, Bellerin is a tidy passer who can maintain possession up the pitch, and you can rely on him with the ball at his feet there. And I don't think you can do that with. I like Tierney. A lot of good things about Tierney, but he's not a possession passer, and Kolasinac can't pass his way out of a brown paper bag. I do want to bring Clive back in here, but Tim, do you want to just sort of finish that?
No, please do.
Okay, so Clive. Yeah. There's a lot here. Before we get to Tim's point about how you rotate the attacking emphasis from left to right. I mean, look, if Saka was playing out left, he's more of a natural winger. You could then let Pepe tuck inside, push Bellerin into the overlap, but you do have the problem that the left-sided fullback, whether it's Kola or Tierney, not going to be able to play that Bellerin role as an inside fullback, tucking into midfield, not to mention that you do have to start Aubameyang at center forward if you're going to do that. But setting all of that aside, it is hard to get away from midfield as where things are breaking down. Early in the game, Saka took up interesting positions. The ball moved quickly. I think that, we did a decent job progressing it. And it was almost like a 4-1-2-3 with Guendouzi sitting behind Ceballos and Saka. And Ceballos and Saka would sort of join into the front line when the defenders pushed up. But as the game wore on, just the inability to progress the ball in central spaces and the inability to move it quickly became so apparent again. And I don't know if the system prevents them accessing central spaces. I don't know if Lacazette's not finding space well or if the distances aren't right. But Clive, I am torn between saying the midfielders just suck and it is a huge problem talent-wise, and saying that whatever we're doing with the system, we're just funneling too many things out wide and not providing access to central spaces. So which way do you lean on that? Do you see midfield as big a problem as I do? And is it talent, system, or both?
Yeah, midfield is a problem, and has been for years, right? So we know that. We can just walk through our midfield. We've got centre midfielders that don't make any tackles in the game. So that's the end of that.
Seems
they
bad.
Don't dominate. They don't dominate. They don't own the space. They don't own it. They want to own it by touching the ball. And by touching the ball more than one or two times, the minute all you do is create and telegraph your next pass. So what happens then? What you don't pass the ball, you lend the ball. It comes back to you. Right, so now let me just tell you how I think the pattern of this game went. Right, so we have a situation where Bellerin's tucked on the right hand side. Doesn't suit him. The perfect player for that role is one on the bench, right? Who's a midfielder, stroke winger, perfect for the inside fullback role. Bellerin in that situation, his passing's not creative enough. He hasn't got a dribble, so he doesn't offer enough threat in that role. He's not brilliant on defending the counter attack. People run through him, right? So he's not strong enough, and he's not even winning races to the ball anymore. Right, so his physicality, people think, well, that's up and down. That's just one part. His repeat sprinting ability has declined, and his ability to get back and recovery pace has declined. Right, so we're not asking him. I think he would much prefer to pop it and go around the outside, but we're not asking him to do that. So Arteta seems to have Pepe on the touchline. That's his choice. Personally, I think Pepe and Lacazette and Aubameyang have to work a lot harder to show people their boots. They don't roll off the front line well. I'll give the midfielders that. I think Pepe's got to work harder to change his position when he receives it. There's no problem every now and again that Pepe comes inside, Bellerin goes outside. Just vary your position when you receive the ball. Create them a problem. Stand between people. Fix two players for your starting position. Don't be easy to mark on the touchline. That's my preference, but some coaches want chalk and boots to stretch defenders out to allow space for Aubameyang and Lacazette to go on the inside channels. That's up to them. So personally now, what's happening? When we're playing well, we snap the ball around one touch. When we start to think we have 3 or 4 touches and things close up, this is the problem. We don't have intelligence. It's game intelligence. I spoke about it on Saturday. It's game intelligence. Keep doing the same things. Feed the forwards, feed our talent. All our money spend is up front. Feed them quickly. Get in behind them, support them. Don't drag people with you. Hold your shape. Dominate. Get close to people. Make them turn away. Don't let people bring the ball into your part of the pitch too easily. Make sure you get around people. Smash a couple of people. This is what football is. It's a competition. It's not a play as you like. It's a competition. Right? Compete, own the space. If number 8 fouled us 8 times, foul him. Take him. Yeah, don't let him take liberties with you. You see what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I couldn't agree more.
Really important. So Guendouzi now, I say this on Saturday, we have a problem with our midfielders, the way they receive the ball. I don't feel comfortable when they receive the ball in the half turn. I don't think they can do it. I think Ceballos doesn't do it. So what he does, he doesn't feel good in the half turn. So you have 3 or 4 manipulation touches and the move's gone. Klepp used to bring the ball in. He used to do a little no-touch turn. Bang, it's gone off the mark. He's been beating the man, but it's gone. The reason why Saka looks so good is the way he receives it and his threat. He's got the threat of a dribble and a carry. As soon as he accelerates at somebody, you accelerate straight at somebody, what you do is you freeze them. You freeze them instead because they think, crikey, he's coming at me at speed. He's got his head up looking at me. I'm frozen. And suddenly Saka finds people. You know why? Because the defence are frozen, wonder what he's going to do. Because they can see he can do anything he likes. It's the same feeling we have with Kevin De Bruyne. When he's steaming forward, we're frozen. We're thinking, what the hell is he going to do now? Because he can whip it into the corner, whip it into the top corner. He can cross it. He can 1-2 you. He can do whatever he likes. And those type of players drive a reaction from defenders. When you haven't got those layers in your game, like Ceballos and Guendouzi have not got, then they drag people onto you, and that's when we lose the battle. I just said to you in the back channel just now, we've gone ahead 13 times this season, and I think we've won only maybe 5 or 6 of those games. Someone will correct me. That tells you me that we have good intentions, but we don't quite have the game intelligence to finish these games off. Then what we do as fans is we then look to the bench. We look to the substitutions, and we say, Maybe it's the substitutions that cause an issue, and sometimes it is, but it's our ability not to sustain control over a sustained period of time, and that is due to the types of players that we have in those central areas. And let's go back to the start of last season. I'll be really brief, Elliot, but
no, please keep going. This is good stuff.
We had a situation with our ex-captain in Granit Xhaka, and we took the easy route and we hammered him for taking off the shirt, all the rest of it. But I'm telling you, when that guy doesn't play, we don't win. We don't play well. He's the one. We've got to find a situation where he's not doing as much as what he was doing, and Arteta did that. He's the player that we miss the most structurally. He gives people structure and he allows people to do things they want to do. We need more of those spinal type players in this club, and not people that want to touch and feel themselves. Do you know what I'm saying? That touch the ball, feel themselves, feel good, demonstrative, a little Cruyff, a little flick, bollocks. It's absolute rubbish. It's not football. It's not going to scare any teams. I watched Wolves after the Arsenal game. You don't want to watch Wolves, mate. You don't want to watch them because they're better than us. They're way better than us. They've got the speed when they need it. They've got the creativity when they need it. They've got the power when they need it, and they've got dynamism and pace. And we're talking about right backs, and we hold up our right back because we like him. He's an Arsenal boy. We like him. But Wolves have got a right back in Matt Doherty, and he's more suited to that role that we're playing right now, and he's more suited to supporting a Saliba next year, a Pepe next year. He's more suited to allowing their careers to be protected. We need to think about the jewels that we have in our club and how we're going to protect their careers. And we can't keep doing this because there's a reason why people leave. It's not just our poor executives, it's how we're managing their playing careers. And we're watching our skipper right now run up and down the left wing. You're looking at his face thinking, are we managing that correctly? We're just not. So this is where I am with it at the moment. But I will say, tactically, this was my favourite game of the season. Execution-wise and intelligence is the one that's made me the most angry.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, like, to your point, I'm married. I have kids. I want to touch and feel myself all the time. It really is the outlet for me at this point, and no one's putting me in the Arsenal midfield. So I don't think that wanting to touch and feel yourself should be a criteria for that. There's a lot of meat on the bone there, and I think it's really good, Clive. And I want to push the conversation ahead a little bit, but Paul, I do want to let you get your 2 cents in on the midfield and Guendouzi in particular, who, to be fair, I thought, like the team in general, started well, but the extent to which I think we just sort of give up, like, you know what I think happens, Paul, almost? They start, they're moving the ball, it's going well, but then, like, I almost feel like they get bored of just spraying it out wide, and then the intensity goes. I can't really explain it. It's like when they can't cut anyone open through the middle, they just kind of stop trying, and then it's just they look up, they give it to a fullback, and they go to sleep. I don't know. What's your take on Guendouzi in midfield and how that broke down?
Yeah, I really wanted to talk on Guendouzi, and this will be an opinion that I don't think people will enjoy because it doesn't fit into how we felt about the game. We mostly played up the wings. We didn't play through the centre that much. He wasn't that busy. But I think if you go back and watch him, everything he does well in this game. He wins his battles. He's combative. Some of his distribution up the left, 2-3 really good passes in the first half to set off Saka and Aubameyang. I just think he does everything he's asked to do really well. We mostly don't try and play out from the keeper or the centre-backs through him because he's got 4 guys around him. They've basically condensed the middle, and we've said, that's fine, works with our plan, we play it up the sides. So he doesn't have a huge number of passes or a huge number of touches, but everything he does, in my opinion, this was one of his best games. We actually tasked him with the one thing we said he can't do, which is be disciplined, stay in place, cover breaks, which I think he does pretty well. Gets a little tired halfway through the second half, but up to that, I think he's really on it in terms of covering the spaces. I think it's very interesting that this could be a one-off. It could have been the nature of this game or whatever, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't see what I saw. Maybe he can't do this again. But what's interesting about this is he doesn't have to share the role with Xhaka or with Torreira, and therefore his responsibilities are clear. He doesn't have to be. He's not Tonto. He's not Robin to Batman here. It's his job to stay in place, to cover, to make the pass, to progress it. And I think, ironically, giving him all of the responsibility instead of 40% of the positional responsibility really played to him in this game. And maybe what he can't do is work out a split, a work share between him and Xhaka or Torreira. What he can do is take on the responsibility and pass from deep, and I think he did a really nice job playing out. So it's not what caught people's eye, and people weren't happy with what went on in midfield, but I think it's partly because we didn't really play through midfield.
Yeah,
but what he did was good.
We don't, and maybe it's just that their profiles are too similar in that Guendouzi and Ceballos both sort of like the extra touch, want to carry it past a guy, want to look up. I mean, the one-touch football isn't there. And Tim, when I think about the City game, and I think about the way Silva and De Bruyne would get close to each other and ping-pong the ball, 1-2 between each other, wall pass, and then one of them moves and creates space. It's so intelligent. We killed Emery a lot, and unfortunately not really, just figuratively, for the spacing and the distances just being so wrong in midfield. And I felt like a lot of that started to get better under Arteta. But what I'm noticing now is that, I don't know that the center of midfield is in a position to play those 1-2 passes. They're often getting kind of far apart. And if you look, there are a lot of screenshots going around from this game where there's a midfielder with the ball at his feet, and all the players he has to pass to are either in the left wing, or if it's on the right, they're on the right wing. But there isn't a lot of occupied central space. And some of that might be in reaction to Brighton packing the midfield. We know teams do that against us, and Brighton like to do that. But do you worry at all that maybe just in terms of system and coaching, we're not getting the spacing right in midfield? It felt like it was better early, and then it really faded. And I don't see our central midfielders pinging passes between each other to progress the ball the way someone like City does. Is that an area where we need to improve, or is it purely just that the players aren't the right profile?
A little bit of both. It's definitely somewhere where we need to improve, but I think we've also got to understand that that's the first time that midfield three has ever played together. Yeah. And none of them are particularly senior, in terms of years. Clive was talking about Xhaka. There's Xhaka for his flaws, and he has many of them, and we shouldn't forget them just because he's not playing at the moment. But, for his flaws, he'll do that kind of, look, I'll stand here, you go over there type thing, And you're right, I think, because at the beginning of the game, it seemed like the structure was kind of there, and you could almost see what they must have been working on in the training ground. But I guess a couple of things happened. My concern when I saw the lineup about that midfield three is that they all like the same space. They all like coming out of the left. Now, I don't think that was an issue for Guendouzi because he was at the base of the midfield. I agree with Paul. I think he did largely what you'd want someone to do in that deep midfield role. I think of all of our issues in this game, he was quite low down, albeit I take the point that he didn't make any tackles. But certainly in terms of in possession, I really don't think he was a problem. And it's only because the whole midfield was so bad, it becomes easy to focus on individuals. I think in a normal game, Guendouzi is just kind of fine. You just think, yeah, okay, that's a 6-7 out of 10. But yes, and I think possibly what happens is when players get tired as well. When you get tired, you kind of go back to what you know, and you do the things that make you feel comfortable. And so, players start going into the areas that they like to go in. But I guess to repeat my earlier point, those kind of pinging passes weren't there because the players that play those passes weren't there. Luiz wasn't there. Mari, I know Arsenal fans haven't seen much of him yet, but believe me, he does that. He does that a lot as a big part of his game. And Xhaka wasn't there. But the biggest miss was Ozil because we just don't have another player who knits the midfield and the attack together. And so what kept happening was the ball progresses to a certain point, And then, no, like between Ceballos and Saka, like there's no 10 there. They're kind of a pair of 8s, and I think Saka's probably a bit more attack minded than Ceballos, but the separation of responsibilities is not quite there. Like Arsenal's midfield, usually, for all its weaknesses, there's a very clear delineation of responsibility. Xhaka's the one who plays deeper and distributes from there. Ozil is the one who plays in between the line, like those between the lines players. Whereas I think with Ceballos, certainly, as he's not a between the lines player, he's a centre circle player, and that's where it just kind of broke down a little bit. And to add to that, he was asked to play on the right of the midfield 3, which I don't think he really likes anyway. And what we really could have done with, as well as someone like Ozil to knit the midfield and the attack together, is a bit more of a carrier there, because the ball just kept getting stuck. And the best moments were when Saka was able to carry a little bit, and that's why he was such a bright spot, because he's able to kind of progress the ball not just with a sideways pass. He's able to kind of charge it forward a little bit, and I really think we could have done with another player like that, which is kind of why I still would have really liked to see Maitland-Niles, because I think he can do that, albeit in a deeper part of the pitch. But I think he's someone who can dribble through pressure. And who's got really good feet and can kind of take the ball forward and take opponents out of shape. The problem with the midfield, in a nutshell, was that basically, if you're playing in a deep block like Brighton, you can sit there and watch Ceballos and Guendouzi play kind of fairly nice sideways passes all day. But at some point, either someone has to be ahead of them, getting between the lines like a Ramsey or an Ozil, or one of them has to drive with it. And we just didn't have enough of that.
Yeah, and by the way, like, there are different ways you can use the wings. Like, if you look at City use the wings to attack a lot, but you know where they get to the wings from? From the top of the box. So a lot of times you'll see Silva 18 yards out from goal, central or left half space, giving it to an overlapping Sterling or Mendy. On the right, it's De Bruyne, or he'll come central and have the ball. You saw it against us, between the lines, top of the box, and he sprays it out wide there where there's space as the defenders are collapsing central to close down that space. That's fine. We get the ball to the wings in the first phase of play. You know what I mean? And that's easier to shut down, because then you can use the touchline as a defender. Look at Saka's heat map. It's left wing, left half space, almost entirely. So that's your number 10, supposedly, playing out wide left. And now you have two sort of slow to move the ball carriers occupying central spaces. And you want to hear something alarming? Can I do an Elliot read statistics from the match segment to you, Clive, before I bring you back in here? Do you mind? Are you okay with that? Okay. So this is our top passing combinations in the match. You ready for this? Kolasinac to Holding. Holding to Kolasinac. So that represents right there almost 60 passes in the match. Holding to Kolasinac, Kolasinac to Holding. Holding to Mustafi, Mustafi to Holding. 43 more passes. Mustafi to Pepe. Bellerin to Mustafi. Martinez to Holding. Guendouzi to Mustafi. Bellerin to Ceballos. That's sort of one of the more midfieldy kind of combinations. And we're already, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 combinations down. Kolasinac to Saka, Kolasinac to Guendouzi. You know what you haven't heard yet? We still haven't gotten to it. Pepe to Bellerin, Ceballos to Aubameyang, Pepe to Mustafi, Guendouzi to Holding, Holding to Martinez. Here we go. Ceballos to Guendouzi. The first instance of me reading off the midfielders passing to each other. That far down, 6 passes from Ceballos to Guendouzi. Guendouzi made 5 passes to Ceballos. The midfield is not linking. And if you look, I don't think I see a single pass. I'm curious. Guendouzi make any passes to Saka? Yes, he made 4 passes to Saka. Ceballos make any passes?
How many did Ceballos make to Pepe? I know the answer, but you tell me.
I don't see any.
2.
2. Okay, and Ceballos to Saka, by the way, which I'm trying to find, and this is unbelievable to me. I can't find it. He must have made a pass to Saka. Did Ceballos not pass to Saka in the entire game? Unless
except on the goal.
Ceballos to Saka, yes,
Here's
two passes.
Goal.
Well, so yes,
I'm
but so
not saying it's all
no.
perfect,
But so hang on. This is not me killing the players. This is me just saying when you're two central midfielders who have to run the show in the middle, and then you've got Saka nominally playing 10, and the midfielders aren't playing it to the 10 at all, and the midfielders aren't playing it to each other at all. What you're basically saying is that you are going to try to build the play up the wings, and what you see a lot is the central defenders passing it to each other, and then the fullbacks trying to give it to the wide players. And I just think you use the touchline and 3 defenders to block it off, and it's too easy to shut it down. And I do think that it fell apart there. And Clive, I know you, unlike Paul, I mean, you really did not like this Ceballos performance. I know you also want to reference Maitland-Niles. I still think it can't just be the players, right? I mean, that has to be the plan. The midfielders don't wind up being that disconnected unless it's the plan, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mind. Honestly, I don't mind the setup. It's just how you execute it, right? So I look at I said earlier, I look at the zone, I look at the right zone, and I see the players in that zone, and I see our superstar forward at the end of things. We gotta do better in making sure he's getting the ball quicker, much quicker, so he hasn't got 3 or 4. After he scored, he got the ball, I think, 3 times after he scored, 3 touches. But one of those touches, as soon as he got it, there was like 3 or 4 players came over to him immediately. That's what you want. That was like it was 70-odd million, wherever it was. Because now they'd seen him put in the top corner, so they've had cause and effect. They've had to react. This is where a fresh player could have been nearer to receive the ball, then drive into the space that obviously was there. Ceballos was the problem in this game for me. And I said on Saturday, I felt he needed protecting. I felt he looked tired from about an hour onwards. And I could see it, and I saw it, and I tweeted it, and I saw it, and I thought, okay, you're dying. We need to push this game away. So we just needed someone like Maitland-Niles to come in there and do that role. And what you do is one substitution. What you get is you get a bit more from Bellerin, because he sees somebody in front that can do some defensive work from him. You also get a slick connection through to Pepe, because that's all Maitland-Niles want to do, is give it to Winger really quickly, one touch, and get up behind him and be there to cover space. I would have loved to have seen it, so it's not just an idea that we have. Another thing is, and I will say this, I watched the Chelsea game afterwards, at some point this weekend, not sure when it was, and I was watching how they were using Giroud as a wall pass. And I'm thinking, that's what we needed in this game, to vary things. You only go where people are available and where they're showing. Yes, I think there's a predefined pattern, but it's always nice to have a wall passer in the middle of the pitch. And I don't think Lacazette showed enough to his midfielders. I don't think he works hard enough defensively, and he doesn't threaten enough his centre-backs. He doesn't get enough. He doesn't face the goal. He doesn't show people enough. I think Tim did a great job on what he did on Saturday, wanting things to be perfect before he shoots. I sort of really agree with that. But I don't see enough threat from him. So he's not attracting enough people. People know Aubameyang's a threat. And Lacazette isn't working hard enough to give us something defensively and to basically give us something attackingly. He's not giving us enough. He's not giving us power. He's not giving enough, and that's what I see there. So that's my view on things. It is what it is right now with that midfield. But if you can think beyond that and think if we can improve the parts, I think that midfield V can work. I think that pattern of play can work, and we just need to improve it. That's the first time we've done it. And I think it was quite interesting to see it work, particularly well on one side. I don't think it worked well enough on the other side. And even on the goal, the way the goal happened, Paul was right. Ceballos was on the left-hand side, and he flicked it across the Saka. 1-2 touches, fizz it into his feet. And then Pepe has got space to do what he wants to do. And that's quite interesting. The combination worked really well on that side once Saka's moved over.
Yeah, we're going to introduce a new feature here where instead of Paul and Elliot screaming at each other, Paul is now going to scream at Clive. Go ahead, Paul.
Look, what Clive knows and what I know about football, I don't deserve to be on the same planet. I think Clive's points are truer across the season and across multiple games than across this game in terms of Ceballos and Lacazette. Lacazette worked his socks off, dropping into midfield to provide a wall pass. He was the most victimized player by the opposition's attentions to our players. in midfield. I also think actually Ceballos had two or three really good wall passes that set Guendouzi up for his passes out to the wings in the first half. There wasn't a lot of it because, again, right or wrong, our plan was, I mean, you just go and look at the heat maps. You don't have heat maps like that unless that's the plan, to play it up the wings. And I think in terms of Ceballos fading in this game, etc., he might have, very late on in the game, have this look at the 60 seconds that covers the 30 seconds before the counter-attack for our goal. Ceballos covers all the way from basically just outside our box back to our box, covers a counter-attack, does well to make sure it comes to nothing, then plays it up the field to Aubameyang, gets the ball back. He's got two guys in front of them, jinks around them, opens the path up for Saka, who feeds Pepe, and we move right across the pitch. That's a 60-second spell in which that goal only happens because Ceballos did all the right things, moved the ball quickly. He did a lot. He didn't.
Can I come back? Can I come back?
Yeah. Well, let me just wrap up because I'm basically done. Which is, he didn't see a huge amount of the ball, just as Guendouzi didn't see that much of the ball. But what they did, I think they did very well. And I think that what worked against Ceballos was he was the guy posted out to the right. But actually, if you look at his heat map, he adds into the mostly got his touches and his activity on the left. So we keep saying, well, what didn't happen on the right? He was over on the left with everybody else, which is his natural side. And I don't think he's getting the credit for the work he did over there connecting wise, even if it doesn't show up in huge passing maps. Over to you, Clive.
Yeah, passing maps just show what happened, and heat maps show what happened. But in this game, we didn't dominate the area. And so having someone moving around in midfield is one thing, but I want them to dominate the area and connect. So number 8 role is the connection role. He needs to connect much quicker, much sharper to get the ball through to our forward talent. I really felt he was fading. And when someone's fading, doesn't mean they can't play football. It just means they can't fill the holes like we should do. You see what I mean? So you're not in position to fill the space as you should be, because it's harder for you to recover once you get moved around. I felt he really suffered at Man City, moved around in that channel, in their best channel, by the way. And that's no shame. No shame at all. He's not super athletic. He works really hard. He expresses himself to work really, really hard. But I thought he had a really tough game. 102 days out of football, 10 men in the midfield. Unbelievably tough. 3 days later, you're playing again. It's no shame when someone runs our legs a little bit. The issue is we didn't spot it quickly enough. We didn't add energy. We didn't manage the game. We didn't manage the flow of the game. I think he was let down. I think Arteta should have substituted him. Choose which one of those two is flagging. I thought Guendouzi was the better player on the day. I have my issues with him, but not on this day. Right? So I felt Ceballos needs protecting. We need to add more. Because someone's hanging in there, it's not enough. And we lost the game in the last few minutes. You could say it's not his fault, but we lost control of the football match. We lost control of it.
Well, I'm not saying he should have been on at 90 minutes. I'm saying he was pretty good for his first 70-something or other. I agree with you on him on City.
I would have said
against
65.
City, they ran around him. I thought he was very poor there. But I think he needed that game. I thought he was actually pretty good. I think everybody was pretty reasonable for the first 70 minutes. And then we got this whole game wrong.
But I think we're missing the forest for the trees here.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
One last thing. Sorry, Elliot. Look, we all love the game. We all love our players. We just lost home and away to Brighton.
I don't love them.
We lost home and away to Brighton. So something's not working. Right? Do you see what I mean? So we lost home and away to Brighton Albion. Right? It's not working. We're unfortunate. We didn't deserve to lose this game. We were unfortunate. Everything that went wrong could go wrong, if that's the right way around. Could go wrong, went wrong. Yeah. We're unfortunate, right? But then you got to look at this and say, what do we need to improve? Because this season's done. What do you need to improve? And if I said to you, we're going to spend 35 million on Ceballos, would you be up for it?
No, we can't. We cannot buy Ceballos. We absolutely cannot, because
he doesn't fix the problems that we have.
No, he's got a profile that we already have if we want that. I don't.
Exactly.
Well, and what I would say is, look, whether you want to talk about the player's failure or the coach's failure, the fact that the central midfield is not exchanging passes between each other, not involving one another in the game, not moving the ball vertically between each other or exchanging quick passes horizontally to then get it to the 10, like whatever you want to say. It was a problem under Emery, and it's become a problem again. Central spaces are not accessed by this team in a way that progresses the ball. It goes out to the wing, it goes up through the fullbacks, and granted, we made this cute little flourish where now, Bellerin tucks in a little, and it creates this sort of 3-3-3 up the pitch that we have, or 3-2, 4, whatever that, 3-3-4 up the pitch, which is neat, and it maybe makes us a little more solid. I actually think defensively this game was okay for most parts. It's the build-up, like they said, it's the economy stupid. It's the build-up stupid. We don't build the play in a varied enough or central enough way to create space for our most valuable players. Aubameyang, Pepe, Saka, if you want to say Lacazette, I think there's huge question marks now about what his future is going to be. But Tim, we've hit the hour mark and we haven't really covered anything, you might say. The subs, I think, are a big issue here. Look, I adore Arteta, and I think one thing we are all going to have to realize is we have a new coach, and he's learning, and we're learning about him. So there are two things. You can like the coach. You can hate the coach. I would say crazy if you hate him, but you're allowed to. It's totally fine. But even if you really like him and adore him, as you analyze the game, you have to analyze things you think he did right or he did wrong. And then next game, you can say, oh, he really got that right. So in this game, I think some things went wrong. And I certainly think that the substitutions are among them. I feel for him. This is a guy who, since he arrived, every single game he loses someone to an injury or a red card or both. So it happens to him again. And I do think that when your substitutions are enforced, you are now going from what your plan might have been to having to adjust on the fly. And what we see is that he's still learning how to do that, and maybe not super effectively. I thought these subs were game killers, personally. Do you want to go through them one at a time, or just as a group? How did you feel about the subs? And did you have a difference of opinion in what might have been the right way to go?
So we had Martinez come on for Leno, obviously. There was the triple substitution with 3 minutes to go, and was that Tierney, Willock and Nketiah for Lacazette, Pepe and Kolasinac? And what was the other one?
Hey, by the way, pause on Twitter, pause on my pants. Thanks, pause.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So the one we did is we had Nketiah come on for Lacazette. We had Willock,
which is a nothing sub.
It's a nothing sub. Yep. We had Willock come on. We had Reece Nelson come on, right? And
yeah.
So that's the one.
So like a series of like for like subs.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and with like not very experienced players. So I feel like, and look, it totally stands to reason that this is a weakness for Arteta because he's never done it before. What he's done is lots of coaching on the training ground, and I kind of don't doubt that element of what he's doing at the moment. What he's never done is substitutions. So it kind of stands to reason if he's struggling with that a little bit. The thing for me is I wonder if, we asked the question in the can't remember if it was in the instant reaction pod or in the other podcast now, but whether Arteta was being too clever by half. With the selection in the City game, we asked that question, didn't we? And I didn't necessarily think so, but I kind of think with the substitutions he was. It always baffled me that people complained about Arsene Wenger's substitutions. I think it was one of his strongest suits. Substitutions.
We certainly knew how to throw on all the forwards.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? Substitutions, when you're trying to win the game, when the game state is stretched and frantic and you're going for a goal, don't be clever. Don't have to be clever, right? Take off your fullbacks, put your wingers at fullback, throw two strikers on and put them on the wing and get your defensive midfielder off. It's not rocket science. Wenger did it all the time, and have a look at how many goal-scoring substitutes we had under Arsene Wenger. How many times did that work? It worked so often, and it wasn't clever, but it didn't have to be, because when you're in the last 10, 15 minutes of a game and you're going for a goal and you apply the pressure, maybe 1 out of 20 times, you overcommit and you get done on the break. But, probably 14 out of 20 times you get the goal, because that's how it goes, particularly when teams are tired and the game's lost its structure anyway. So I really didn't understand the need, with 3 minutes to go, to take the rhythm out of the game by making the sub in the first place, because and this is one of the risks you run with substitutions. You can drain and sap the momentum out of the game by doing them, which is why you should do them before the 87th minute, because if you kill momentum for 2 minutes on 87 minutes, then you're buggered. You've kind of lost your chance to win the game. I don't think the substitutions were responsible for Brighton's winner, but I think they were responsible for at least stopping Arsenal from having a go at winning the game. When I felt like once Brighton equalised, Arsenal perked up again, and I think the subs stopped that. And basically, unless and substitutions will kind of always do that for a minute or two. So what you've got to do is like throw on all the forwards and make that less of an issue. And yeah, I think maybe he just tried to be a little bit too clever. And hopefully, like, he's a bright guy. I'm fairly confident he'll learn from it.
Yeah, I think so too. I understand. Look, on the one hand, we really are trying to use this period of football to learn a bit about the Nelsons and Willocks and Nketiahs, and it's important that we learn about them because we need to know what their future is. And it's almost a free hit because the league is basically trashed for us. So it's hard for me to analyze. Is he doing this just to see what these guys are about, or is he doing it because he thinks these are the right guys to bring on? I don't fully understand why Martinelli hasn't been involved. I think, that's something that we'll look at. Clive, in 3 minutes or less, as we bump up against a hard stop here, it is a bit of a rock bottom situation. I'm curious if you just had, an instant. I mean, and there are little things here, right? Like being left to defend 1v2 on a short corner. Like, is that coaching? Is it players? There's a lot of little things here that need to get corrected. I think the fact that we didn't opt to circle the wagons around the Leno injury and instead sort of let Mopé off the hook, I have problems with that. How do we get turned around in 3 minutes or less? What's the going forward strategy? We're without Leno. We're without Xhaka. We're without Murray. We're now maybe without Guendouzi for a few games if he gets banned. How do you...
No, he's not going to get banned.
Okay, so he's not going to get banned. So there you go. So, but going forward, if you had Arteta's ear and you had 2 minutes to say, mate, do this for the next game, what would you say?
Okay, well, on the short corner, quickly, what happens is you have somebody that's already out there to look out for the short corner, and if two people go out, the person on the front zone should go out to back him up. Right, so basically, what happened there? Lacazette was on his heels, didn't go out to support Ceballos. I killed Ceballos, said he was walked around. Yeah, well, he was walked around, but you know what? It was 2 against 1, so it was easy. So that was the issue there. So if I was is Arteta right now, I would, if he wants to play this way, let's keep doing it. But maybe he's found something that the balance of Guendouzi and Ceballos isn't perfect. So we need to flick that around somehow. If he decides it's Ozil, if he decides it's Willock, if he decides it's Maitland-Niles, that's up to him. I just feel we need something else, the ability to manipulate the ball, but offer a bit of speed in that role and drive in that role. I think once you have that, you have a bit of dynamism from the central position. I want to see Pepe touch the ball more in a game. It's all right for him to say he's got to be our match winner or someone to be feared. Well, then let's play him in like he's someone to be feared. Let's give him the ball. Let's get around referees when he gets fouled. Let's make sure everyone knows that he's a trickster and he needs protecting. Because I think that guy's got unbelievable talent. There's something that he has. I watched Arsene Wenger talk about Zinedine Zidane, and he spoke about what was his major talent. He said he had very loose ankles. He could manipulate the ball. His ankles were really loose. And the ankles is your trade. I look at Pepe, and if you watch when he strikes the ball, how his ankle comes right the way out, almost like 90 degrees, and he gets unbelievable contact on the ball. He gets the biggest part of his foot on the ball, and the ball just does whatever he wants it to do. He is a special talent, and we have to lean into him more. Stop whining about the things he can't do. Support him in what he can't do. Make sure he's got the right players around him, and give him the football. That's the key thing. We don't score enough goals to not let him have the touches. He needs more touches, more ability to change the course of games, because he has a special talent that no one else has in this team. So lean into that. We've got to sort Aubameyang out in the centre forward position. Now we've got a position for Saka as left eight. We've got to get Aubameyang in the middle of that pitch, and we've got to get that young kid out there on the left-hand side to see what he's got. Or Nelson on the left-hand side. Decide. Let's find out. Let's find out so we don't have a debate anymore.
Well, I mean, the good news is the football keeps coming, and we'll just either keep bouncing off the bottom or eventually find something that changes it. And hopefully it's the latter. Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter at Stoberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Give us a 5-star review. Write nasty things about Paul in the comments. Of course, we will have a preview pod for patrons before the Southampton game, which I am sure we will win by the total I'm about to say. And then another pod after that. They keep coming. And we'll eventually get it right, both on the pod and on the football pitch. So we'll hope for that. And anyway, we love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Southampton.